Was there another part to your question?
No, that was my.
Okay.
That was the question. Thank you. I want to quickly hit on a couple of subjects. We have about 10 minutes left.
Oh, we do.
In the hour.
Okay.
Not that we can't go longer than that. We certainly can. Should the federal government? You mentioned that President Nixon mandating a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and this discussion has come up about that again now with the high gas prices. Should the federal government reinstate a national speed limit in order to cut gas consumption? And are there other measures that the government should be mandating?
Well, I think the government should be helping out much more. Again, if we could reduce that military budget and start to redistribute it to domestic, there's a tremendous amount that could be done in the way of public transportation. I think the question comes up, I can remember, because I'm old enough to remember when the double nickel hit us.
Right.
And I remember the trucking industry being up in arms because they claimed all their engines were tuned to run at 65 and get maximum efficiency. That when they had to slow down to 55, their miles per gallon got very expensive on them. So I think certainly there's the safety issue of how fast people are allowed to drive. There's no question about that. I don't think people who drive 55 or 65 are the dangerous drivers out there. It's the drunks that are doing 110 down the middle. But rather, it's also an engineering aspect to, would it be more energy efficient to lower national speed limits? And I'm not an engineer, I couldn't answer it, but it would be a good question to get answered.
Speaking of drunken driving, there's been discussion just in the last couple of days about lowering the drinking age to 18. Should the federal government lift restrictions on highway funds, thereby allowing states to lower the drinking age to 18?
Should they lift federal funds?
Right now, my understanding is that the reason that the incentive for states to keep a 21 drinking age is because if it's lower than that, they will not receive federal highway funds. Well, in other words,
I
it's like a mandate.
When I said I moved to the Berkshires in 1971, at that time, youth in New York could drink at 18. And we're quite close to the New York State border. Youth in Massachusetts had to wait 21. Naturally, kids being kids would be in the car on Friday night booking over the New York State line, partying hard, and there were terrible disasters that happened as a result of that. So the question is not so simple, because I believe that the presidents of the universities and colleges of Massachusetts are debating this issue as we speak. But I'm thinking back that this should not be a state-by-state decision, because we could recreate the habits that have existed in the past by having a lack of uniformity. And I think the debate is appropriate to be held amongst the presidents of the universities. They're dealing with the deportment and the behaviors of people who are 18 to 22 quite regularly, where I got my 2 and they've made it to 21 and 23. But I think we should let that debate be carried on in the halls that it is, and see if there's consensus around the country before any changes are made.
Do you support gay marriage? And as an addition to that, should the federal government have a role in that discussion, or should those issues be left up to the states?
I think those decisions should be left up to the individuals. I think it's been decided in this state by the Supreme Judicial Court, and it upheld our state and the federal constitution's right that everyone be treated equally. I've never been a very nosy person. I don't really want to know what's going on in someone else's bedroom. I don't feel it's my business any more than I would want that camera in the bedroom when my wife and I are enjoying our privacy. So I don't see it being a government role at all, except that the foundations of our government say that we're all created equal, and people should be allowed their privacy.
So if a bill like the Defense of Marriage Act were to come up again, or something similar to that were to come up in the Congress, I'm understanding you're saying that you would oppose any legislation that might restrict, say, a gay marriage here in Massachusetts being recognized in another state, those sorts of things.
I think recently Governor Patrick, because Governor Romney had stood on an antiquated law here that wouldn't allow people from other states where same-sex marriage was forbidden to come to Massachusetts and get married. and I think Governor Patrick has rightfully stricken that down. I really feel there are such vital and important issues for our federal government to be dealing with, for our state government to be dealing with, that what's going on in people's bedrooms, as long as it isn't violence and criminal, should be left alone. We've got plenty of these other issues that are so vital and need our time and attention. I think these are sort of divisive issues, and we can expend a tremendous amount of time and energy on them, and still energy needs, the fuel costs, I mean, housing, transportation, agriculture, reestablishing a balance between the three branches of government. This is what we want our government to be working on.
The Supreme Court recently ruled that the Second Amendment guarantees the right of an individual to own firearms subject to reasonable regulation. Do you agree that the Constitution includes an individual right to bear arms? And in your opinion, what regulations or restrictions would be reasonable?
Well, I'm quite certain that the Constitution does protect the individual's rights to bear arms. I think that it was initially arms were to be kept in an armory in the center of the village in case there was an attack coming. Then the people of the village could go and get armed and protect and defend. But people have been hunting game for longer than you and I have been around, longer than the Constitution's been around. And I allow a fellow who does bow hunting to come on my land in the fall and he's a very conservative guy. As a matter of fact, he didn't take a deer last year. He didn't find the right one.
Right.
And I find that more sporting than pulling the trigger. But I don't want to stand in the way of people's rights to enjoy the sport, or perhaps the provision of food for their families through hunting. Attack weapons, concealed small arms, to me, shouldn't. I don't think that we have any need unless we're looking for trouble. And I should take that back, because there are the men that come to our banks to take bags of money to some other reserve and what have you that need to protect it. That's the community's money. They should be allowed to arm themselves. But I kind of like the way it has been in England for all these years. The citizens don't carry guns, and their bobbies don't carry guns. And I don't think they've got any worse crime problem than we do here.